Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and you're tuning in to The Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've prepared another quick list video for all of you. We're going to be talking about the 5 best comic books I've read based on recommendation. This is a list I've been toying with for a little bit and I cannot wait to share with all of you. I think especially since starting this channel, I get all these great recommendations for comic book reads, and sometimes I even take up those recommendations, purchase a copy, and check it out. And these are some that I really am thankful I went ahead and did that. Before we kick off the list, though, I do want to shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link for it in this video's description, and if you see something there you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's probably the best way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's list. First up, I want to talk about Supergirl, The Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King and Bilquis. This is easily one of my favorite comics I've read in recent years. This was actually my favorite comic book read of last year, 2023. I just adored this book. Yes, I have the standard size paperback here. I do know they are coming out with an oversized hardcover edition from DC solicited for later this year. I may just have to double dip because I love this book so much, especially that artwork from Evely. It's dreamy and just surreal and interesting, and it's unlike anything I've ever seen. And that's not to say the writing on this book from Tom King is anything to look your nose down upon. I honestly think it's some of my favorite writing from King. We get the most lyrical side of his prose style. It's beautiful to read. I really enjoyed it. The kind of narration we get from one of the main characters I just think is exceptional all the way throughout. The story in general is kind of a coming-of-age and revenge story from one of the main leads who teams up with Supergirl to span the stars looking for her father's killer. Along the way, she finds it hard not to be inspired by Supergirl's authenticity and goodness and strength. I really think that this was all really well done. I do think that I got to appreciate the character of Supergirl in a way I'd never had before. I think that this book really made that character feel real and relatable. Even though you also had this character that's elevated to just this high pedestal, I felt like I understand her better as a person, and I think that that's so well done. And also, all of these other characters throughout the book that I've never even heard of, I felt myself really just caring for them with a really deep sense of compassion, and I have to attribute that to great writing and of course great illustration. This standalone miniseries doesn't require you to read any other outside book. You can literally just pick this up going in blind and read a great story beginning, middle, and end, which I largely did here. I have seen Supergirl show up in different storylines, though admittedly I haven't read a lot of her solo stuff. But if any are anywhere close to what I read here in Woman of Tomorrow, I definitely want to seek out more from this character. In so many ways, this book is just a triumph to me. It absolutely elevates what I can expect from the big two, Marvel or DC, for a standalone superhero graphic novel. It's really impeccable. I think that there's something very literary about this book as well. I think that this could be a great book as a gateway comic for those that maybe aren't interested in this whole medium, but you kind of want to lure them in, especially with a superhero comic from Marvel or DC. I think this is a great way to do it. Also, allegedly, James Gunn is basing the upcoming Supergirl live-action property on this in some form. I hope it does it justice, because honestly, I really love the storytelling here. This is a book I absolutely had recommended to me throughout the years. I think since doing this channel, I'm so happy I finally gave it a read. I don't know if I would have found it otherwise, and I'm so happy I did. Easily one of my favorite comics I've ever had the pleasure of reading. Don't miss out on Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Next on our list today, we have Superman American Alien by Max Landis. This is a standard size hardcover from DC Comics. This is a book I had the pleasure of reviewing earlier this last year. Really like this as well. This is a book I had recommended to me a couple of times. Whenever Superman came up, everyone always said, "Have you read American Alien?" And for the longest time, my answer was no. And then I found a copy I believed at a used bookstore. It looks like new condition, and I just devoured this thing. I simply loved it as a Superman fan. Ostensibly, it is a Superman kind of early era origin story, I guess. It feels kind of like an anthology or really a sequence of interconnected vignettes. that really begin in Superman's childhood all the way through his fledgling days as the Man of Steel over in Metropolis, and kind of everything in between. We have a couple stories during his adolescence as well. Each issue is written by Max Landis, but we have a different artist attached to each of these issues that take place kind of chronologically through his upbringing, and I think that this was just so effective. Like, the first artist has this kind of rounded, polished feel. We see kind of the character models of a young Clark being kind of doe-eyed. I really loved that. And then when we had adolescence, we had kind of an intense moment. We had kind of a scratchier, more gritty art style. And then throughout it, we had just different artists. We had some incredible people like Jay Lee, who's a personal favorite. In these pages, we had introductions to characters like Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, even Lobo. I really thought it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of great twists and turns as well. There's a point where Superman may or may not be mistaken for Bruce Wayne. That was really a fun aspect of an issue. But I just think it's a really, really great take on early kind of Clark Kent, Superman coming-of-age storytelling. I love the novel approach of having the same writer throughout it, so you have that singularity of voice, but having all of these different artists and all of these different time periods in his life, you really feel like you had defined stories with each issue, and yet reading it from end to end, you feel like you have a great comprehensive experience. I haven't read a lot like this. I feel like anything I've read that's been more vignettes have felt more separated than this did. I felt like this really tied together a lot of great themes and ideas about just the coming of age of the Man of Steel. I think that this is an absolute must read, particularly for Superman fans out there, but if you want something different and you're a fan of the overall DC universe, this is one I would definitely recommend to you as well. I'm really happy that I got this recommended for me, and I'm happy I finally just sat down and read a copy. I thought it was really, really great, a ton of fun, and easily one of my favorite standout Superman stories I've read in the recent years. And hey, if you're watching this video and you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I would just like to encourage you to do it. I'm always doing list videos like this, comic book reviews, unboxings. I've even started dabbling in live streams. Anyway, would love to have you aboard. Thank you for considering. Definitely check out, like I mentioned, Superman American Alien, and let's keep going with today's list. Next up, we have a big oversized hardcover from Image Comics. We're looking at Firepower Book 1 by Robert Kirkman and Chris Samnee. I'll admit I struggled on whether or not to put this on this list, but the more I thought about it, the more I really just thought, this is a fantastic book that I only read because it was recommended, and I'm really happy I did. And so that was enough criteria to make it in the list for me. I think some of my trepidation is Book 2 has yet to come out in this format, so I have not read the second half of this storyline. I'm hoping everything resolves well, but even with what we got in Book 1, I think Firepower is just a fantastic read. Chris Samnee is an artist I was familiar with during the run of Daredevil by Mark Waid, but seeing him unleash his powers on this title, I just think it was extraordinary. I know Robert Kirkman stated he really couldn't wait to work with Chris Samnee, and here we go with this collaboration. Kirkman, of course, bringing us titles like Invincible, The Walking Dead, to name a few, but Firepower is really kind of the mystical, martial arts, chosen one kind of narrative, the boy from the West who is the chosen one, but one of the things I like about it is that the first maybe half of this book is all a prelude kind of graphic novel that sets the stage for the main comic book run. That prelude has the origin of how this character ends up in this monastic village deep in this mountain range and begins studying this kind of ancient tradition of martial arts where it's believed that someone can harness basically a fireball. This is kind of the setup for Firepower. We really have just some great, just beautiful scenic vistas and just character models throughout it from the incredible Chris Samnee, but we also have a lot of great fighting sequences. This is ultimately a martial arts fighting kind of comic, and I think it's super fun for what it is. I'll try not to ruin the twist of this narrative here, but essentially after the prelude, the storytelling takes a decided shift, and I really enjoy the choices that Kirkman made here to just kind of shift the storytelling after the prelude and really give us a good new entry point for the run proper. I think that this was a really great series from what I read in this book. I'm eagerly awaiting reading the Book 2 in this oversized hardcover edition that I believe is solicited from Image Comics coming out later this year. I think one of the things I like about this so much is, again, that incredible art from Chris Samnee. It is absolutely jaw-dropping. We have several instances, as you've already seen throughout this video, of these beautiful two-page spreads. We have some incredibly well and cinematically choreographed fight sequences that I think are just exceptional. I've heard some people say that this might feel a bit generic or paint by numbers for this kind of mythical Westerner who gets this secret martial arts power. You've seen it over and over in comics, I suppose. I think there's some level of truth to that. You know, if you've read things like The Immortal Iron Fist, I think that there is some shared kind of background here that we're paying homage to. But I think that, honestly, Firepower has enough uniqueness in and of itself, and when you set apart with that great art, I do think it's really a powerhouse title that is worth reading in its own right. If you like this genre, if you like either of these creators, or if this just sounds interesting to you, I definitely recommend checking out Firepower. I'm so happy someone recommended it to me. Next, we're going to go ahead and transition to some omnibuses. I want to talk about Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman. Here we have the Omnibus Volume 1. This is the first of a 2-volume set that includes the entirety of that Hickman era of Fantastic Four. I believe I chose this as my favorite comic I read of the year in 2022. Of course, it had to make this list. This was also my first foray into the comic books of Jonathan Hickman, and this was again read based purely on recommendation. I've always enjoyed the Fantastic Four, and they're a franchise I've wanted to delve further into, but ever since I got kind of into comics as an adult, especially when I came back to comic books, I would hear whispers about this Jonathan Hickman run. You have to read Hickman's era. You have to read Hickman's Fantastic Four. It's the best definitive Fantastic Four run since Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. These are the things I've always would hear, and that is obviously a debatable claim, but enough kind of positive commendations of this book, I really just was curious about it, and the other year Marvel decided to reprint both omnibuses, so of course I had to give it a try, and wow, it just blew my hair back. I love just the epic scope level of storytelling that Hickman can provide. I like that he's kind of a cerebral writer in many ways. I like how much he leaned on science fiction and kind of fantastical tropes and genres here, and I just think it worked really well. I do think that his run prioritized characters like Reed Richards and the Human Torch more than maybe the Thing or Sue, but overall you still get a lot of great appearances from all the members of Fantastic Four. You get some great family and team dynamics, some great villain fights, but overall you do have that one just grand scale master kind of epic storytelling. And this also is one of the first main building blocks in his overall Marvel move that ends in Secret Wars. We have so much of what he builds starting here with Fantastic Four, but honestly it is great. I think that anyone that wants to read a great superhero comic book run in the big two, definitely check out Fantastic Four by Hickman, especially if you enjoy kind of epic storytelling, science fiction genre. Definitely read it. It is a blast. I also think that for being so cerebral, it was pretty palatable. Like, I didn't find myself overly confused reading it. I just had a grand old time. As far as the art on the book goes, it does change hands quite a bit throughout the run, but overall, I think all the artists did a really admirable job. There are a couple glaring art transitions, but overall, you have the pretty similar players showing up for larger portions of the book. I think I had to include it on this list because, like I said, it's one of my favorite comic book runs I've read in recent history. It probably is my favorite Fantastic Four run I've read, but honestly, I read this, again, based on recommendations, and not only do I love this run, I love the writer Jonathan Hickman, and I'm not sure if I would have discovered him if not for recommendations I received, honestly, on YouTube. So when I ask myself the question, what are the best comic books you've ever gotten based on recommendation, The Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman makes that list for me every time. If not at the very top, at the near top. I don't know that these are in order, but honestly, I definitely think about this title when I think about a great recommendation. And last on our list today, but certainly not least, we have the Venom Omnibus by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman, or the Venomnibus for those that, collect some of those other editions. This is a fantastic run on Venom. If you've ever liked this symbiote character from Marvel, this is, in my mind, the definitive Venom run. I've read different solo Venom titles. I've definitely read them in the pages of The Amazing Spider-Man. This is always a character I've been fascinated by. Being a 90s kid myself, I was all into the symbiote characters, more more Venom than Carnage. Carnage has always kind of creeped me out. He's really effective at being truly scary, at least in my mind. But Venom I always thought was really interesting, especially when he started to take a turn as more of an anti-hero. I think he became that much more layered and compelling. And yes, I know others have worn the symbiote other than the great Eddie Brock, who first became Venom. But honestly, I think that this run does a great job at kind of honoring all the past wearers of the symbiote, but also really elevating Eddie Brock to a real heroic status. I do think that I've never cared more about this character than in the pages of this omnibus. We get a lot of really great just depth to character. The supporting cast is really interesting. I love the inclusion of just the heroes and villains we get throughout this omnibus. But a huge selling point is also the incredible art of Ryan Stegman, which we have for a majority of this book. Like Bilquis Evely, like Chris Samnee, we have a lot of great kind of two-page splash, just beautiful images. We have some great paneling. We just have some really exciting just art. I think the visuals on this book are phenomenal. The kind of dark grit we have from Stegman's illustrative style is on full display here for Venom. Another thing I love about this run is we are introduced to a new big bad villain that has direct ties to the symbiote and to this main character because of that. And we basically at the beginning have kind of an inciting incident that for the rest of the book we know this thing is coming. We kind of have the timer, the unseen clock begins the countdown, and we know the whole run that there's this sort of impending sense of doom. And we have that all coming to a head in the incredible conclusion in this omnibus. And because of that, this is basically one of my favorite singular standalone volume omnibus reading experiences I've ever had the pleasure of reading. A great one and done book. Like I said, you don't need to know a ton of backstory to just pick this up and enjoy it. I think it fills in the gaps nicely. But I think if you are familiar with the history of Venom and all those that have worn the symbiote, there's a lot of great payoffs and Easter eggs and little references that I think will really make longer time Venom fans that much more happy. But I know this has made me such a deeper Venom fan. I really cannot believe everything that was kind of just articulated for this run. And honestly, for a dark, gritty Venom book, there's an unbelievable amount about just hope and teamwork and being in something together and what it means to be a hero, trying to find redemption, trying to do right. And I just think that that was so effectively conveyed, and I didn't expect to feel that way in a Venom book. And I really think that is largely to thank Donny Cates for. Really well done. It's definitely made me an instant fan of that writer. And the Ryan Stegman art, wow, it just really elevates this book into something else. And again, it's another book that I only read because I had it recommended to me. Wow. And can you believe it? I think that's already going to wrap us up on the 5 best comic books I've read based on recommendation. This was a really fun list, at least for me when I'm producing it. This is a topic I've been thinking about for some time, and I'm so happy I finally gave it a go. Let me know in the comments, what are some of your favorite books you've ever been recommended that you've enjoyed? You have some recommendations at the ready? Let me know all of that in the comments below. Also, let me know, are you still liking these lists? Do you like this one in particular? Would you like to see a second part of this with more comic book recommendations that I really loved? Let me know all of that in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. It really makes this whole endeavor worthwhile, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks again, everyone, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, maybe comment, and check out one of those other videos I have on your way out. Thank you so much. Have a good one.